Hi, welcome to my review of Evan-Moor's Grammar and Punctuation Workbooks. I will answer the following questions for you in this review. How does it work? What should you buy if you choose to try this out? How much time will it take both from you and your students? How does it rate according to criteria that I use? My thoughts on whether or not it will work for your family, and any tips that I have if you choose to use this. Before that, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Leslie. I would love to connect with you on social media. You see my contact info here. You can also find me on my website, lesliemaddox.com, or you can sign up for my newsletter. Now on to the review. How does this work? Well, there is a workbook for each of the grade levels for elementary school. I believe it's 1st through 6th grade. So in each workbook, there are 25 rules to learn. And each of the grade levels have a different set of 25 rules. I mean, they'll all be related. I mean, they're all grammar and punctuation related, obviously, right? But they're not like your 1st grader isn't going to get the same rules to learn as your 6th grader. Obviously, your 6th grader is going to be covering more advanced topics. But in each workbook, there are 25 rules to learn. Each of the rules has a rule, what they call a rule chart. I really just call it a page with information about the rule on it. And it might have some little charts on it. And that's important to know because depending on how your student processes information, if they really love the charts, that's not exactly what this is. It's a page with a description of a particular grammar rule along with some examples on it. So it's very helpful. But if you really need your information, or your student really needs information in very much a chart form, you may want to find some kind of adaptation for this. Each of the rule charts or rule pages, each of the rules comes with 3 student practice pages, and they are generally in increasing difficulty, and they do require the student to pull information from their brain. I mean, they can refer to the rule chart page to help them, especially with the examples that are given. Their rule pages are very nicely done, but at some point they'll have to pull information from their brain. For example, if the student is learning about different types of sentences, one of the student practice pages might have the student identify the types of sentences that are listed for them. So they might have examples of different types of sentences, and the student will have to identify which one each is. But then another practice page might have the student write their own version of each type of sentence. So that kind of thing. They increase in difficulty. You may need to supplement with other activities, but it's not listed in here how to do that. A thing to remember is that it looks like these workbooks, they are written for a traditional classroom setting where a teacher will be incorporating these rules and practice pages into their language arts studies, and will be teaching them in maybe some other way. And the rule charts are just there for reference, and then these practice pages help the student practice the concept. In a homeschool setting, you may need to come up with some way other than the rule chart pages to demonstrate each of these concepts. And if your student needs more hands-on activities, you may have to find those. Or if they need more practice, you may need to find those. You can go to Teachers Pay Teachers or a teacher supply store, or various websites online to maybe get more worksheets or a more hands-on activity. But that's just something to be aware of. This workbook doesn't tell you how to do that. What should you buy if you choose to try this? Well, if you go to the Evan-Moor website, you will see that there is a print version available and an ebook version. Both of them, the pages are reproducible, meaning you are allowed to either copy the print version pages or the ebook, print out the ebook pages for your students. I don't believe that there's a separate teacher's manual. Some of Evan-Moor's products do have that. There's a separate student practice book where it's just the student pages in there. This one doesn't have that, so you can have your answer key and all on the back. So if you choose to just hand it to your student, like the print version for them to use, you just want to keep that in mind. Maybe take out the answer pages for your reference. So how much time will it take from you and your student? Well, as the homeschool mom, you will have to do some prep. There's the planning part of it where you'll have to determine how you're going to use these rules and the practice pages. How are you going to schedule this? Is it going to be 3 days a week or 4 days a week? Are you just going to roll on through, or you just have to make those decisions for how you're going to use the workbook. And you'll also need to decide if you're going to get the print version or the ebook version, because you will need to assemble the student work. Especially if you get the print version, you're definitely going to have to assemble the student book. You'll have to print out the pages that you need, and if you use the workbook, you may want to tear apart the book to put the pages into some kind of file system or binder system or workbox system, whatever you do to organize your students' work. So there's that prep portion of it, which is really no different than any other curriculum. The additional activity I think that you'll need to consider with this is finding supplemental activities for your student to do in order to cement their understanding of the different grammar rules. And even if you're not sure if you're going to need them during the year, I mean, there may be some grammar rules that are very simple for your student and others that are a little more abstract that they have to think about. So even if you don't think you're going to need it for all of them, I would recommend that if you think at all that you might need to do some additional activities, try to do all that while you're planning the school year instead of during the year. Because if you have to go out there and find YouTube videos, for example, or Teachers Pay Teachers worksheets, or if you need to go to a teacher supply store and find some little hands-on activities, or maybe build some hands-on activities with activities that you purchase from Teachers Pay Teachers, for example, if you want to cut things out and laminate them and all that, that takes time. And if you're, when you're living your life during the homeschool year and being pulled in many different directions, that's really difficult to do, and it takes what should be a pretty straightforward curriculum and makes it complicated and time consuming during the school year. So I highly recommend before the school year begins, as you're planning out your year and planning out the grammar portion, to go ahead and look for different activities and maybe videos and things that you can use in case your student is lacking understanding in a particular grammar concept. For your students individually, once the teaching has been done, for each rule, it should take less than 20 minutes and probably closer to less than 10 minutes a day or per practice page. So if you do 3 practice pages a week, that means it should be a total of less than half an hour of your student working independently on those practice pages, plus however much time it takes for you to introduce the grammar rule to them and teach it to them. So how would I rate Evan-Moor Grammar and Punctuation? This is just using the criteria that I use to rate different curriculum options. The first is it written by experts? And while I don't have a for sure on this, I rate it as a 5 because this is curriculum that's targeted to a traditional school setting. And so Evan-Moor is an established company. It's not just your local homeschool mom putting together worksheets. So not that that's a bad thing, but this is a company this is what they do. They provide curriculum options. So I think it's a pretty good guess to say that this is written by experts. It does not include planning suggestions, again, because I believe it's targeted to a classroom setting where the teacher's incorporating this into all their language arts studies, and she knows or he knows what to do in that regard. So if you're a homeschool parent and maybe this is your first year teaching grammar and you're just not sure what to do, this is not the book that's going to give it to you. I think it's pretty straightforward. So, it teaches you how to use it. It doesn't teach you how to use it, but I think it's pretty straightforward that even the first time homeschool mom who's never taught grammar will do okay with it. But it's not going to hold your hand through that process. It does provide stepwise learning, since each rule covers a specific grammar concept and is specific enough that I do consider this to be stepwise learning, because they're not learning 10 things at once. They're learning one grammar rule at a time. So I like that very much. So I rate that out of 5. There are no other supplies needed for this. or that's required by the curriculum itself. If you want to supplement with other activities, that's one thing, but nothing that's required by the curriculum. So I just didn't even consider that option and said homeschool friendly. I say yes because it is pretty straightforward and it's very flexible in how you use it. So it is homeschool friendly. The reason I didn't give it 5 stars is because for the maybe newer homeschool mom who isn't very confident in teaching grammar or anything language arts related, and they're new to working with curriculum, this is not the one that's going to hold your hand. If you get curriculum that is targeted toward homeschool parents, they do a better job of supporting the homeschool parent in that way. But this is not the one that's going to do that. So overall, I rated it at 3.5 stars. My experience with it is probably more 4.5 stars, closer to 5. So that's just like my feelings rating, but based on the criteria I've listed, it's a 3.5. Now, will this work for your family? So let's talk about this. This is really going to depend on how your student learns, what learning methods work best for them, and what social setting works best for them. So since these are worksheets, basically, I would say that the ideal student is a student that does well with the written word, with reading all the descriptions or the grammar rules and then writing things out. And then also a student that works well independently. You'll also want to think about how your student receives instruction from you. So are you going to actively teach that grammar rule to them? In that case, then you're going to want a student who's willing to listen to you and can focus on you giving them that instruction. If you have a student that is just give me the rule pages and I'll read them and figure it out myself, then that's really helpful for you. You might not have to do any one-on-one work for them. But if they're not reading very well on their own, for example, and let's say a first grader isn't a very good reader and they're going to need you to sit with them and describe the grammar rules to them, are they willing to work with you one-on-one in that regard? And that may sound funny to people who haven't come across that issue as a homeschool mom who does have students who struggle working one-on-one. It's a real thing. So just kind of think about that. Also, if your student has the opposite problem where all they want to do is work with you one-on-one, you're going to have to ask yourself, do you want to really sit here and work through 3 different student pages each week with your student? So that's why I put a maybe for that. Other than that, if your student needs YouTube videos to learn things, if they need to physically touch things, if they need interactive activities to learn these concepts, you're going to have to supply those supplemental activities to be able to do all that. And also, if you're thinking about doing this in a group setting, or specifically with siblings who are a similar age, it'll depend on how you do this for whether or not it'll work. I mean, obviously these are meant for a classroom setting, which is a group, but usually what's going to happen, the teacher's going to explain the concept and maybe walk through some of the examples with the kids, maybe one of the practice pages, and the students will work independently. Now, if you're wanting to do this with siblings, they're probably not going to be the same age, unless you have like twins or kids in the same grade. So that's going to be different than that traditional classroom setting. So let's say you have a second grader and a third grader. You may want to level down to second grade and do the second grade books with both of your kids and do introduce the grammar rule to them together in that group setting, and then have them work on the practice pages independently. Or, maybe you can do those as a group as well. It seems like it'd be pretty time consuming. So it just depends on how you want to approach it. This is why I say it's homeschool friendly, that you can adapt how you use it. But the more you get away from the students doing it independently, the more teacher work is going to be required from you. The more time is going to be required from you as the parent. Now, how would I recommend you use these workbooks? I got the ebook versions of of these workbooks. I think all of them, I've used like 3 or 4 different grade levels. I want to say I got the ebook version of all of them. So you can print out just the pages that you need yourself at home, or you can do what I did this last time around. I had them printed at the Homeschool printing company, which is nice because you can have them bound like on a coil binding, and so it's really easy for your students. Now, if you do that, just be warned that you'll want to give yourself some lead time. It might take even a month before you get your order from the Homeschool printing company. Last year when I put in the order, because of COVID and just all the new homeschoolers, in the homeschool community, it took a really long time to get my order, so it took even longer than that. But this is a nice option for you to not have to think about it. If you do have it printed at the Homeschool printing company, think about how you want to have it bound. I had it bound with that coil binding on top, so it flipped up like a legal pad. I did that because my kids really hate to have their arms or their hands rest on that spine when they're writing. It really, one of my kids especially, it really drives him absolutely crazy. So that was a really nice option to be able to do that. My next tip would be to schedule this workbook out so that you cover 1 rule per week. The way I did it was on Mondays, I sat with each child individually and introduced a new grammar rule for them for that week and got them started on the first practice page. And I might do the whole practice page with them to make sure they understood it, or just kind of got them started on it. And then usually Tuesday and Wednesday, they did the other 2 practice pages independently. I graded them, I checked them, and then they corrected their work along with whatever further instruction I felt that they needed from me if they really weren't totally getting it. In this way, we did grammar 3 days a week. And then we had a couple of days of wiggle room each week, which was really nice. So if you do it like this, then you have all that wiggle room. If you're doing a co-op 1 day a week, then you don't have to worry about that. You just don't do grammar on the day that you have your co-op, so that's not interrupted in any way. You can also do a 4-day-a-week schedule where maybe you introduce the grammar rule 1 day a week along with some supplemental activities. So spend 10-15 minutes doing that, and then the next 3 days have your student do the practice pages independently. So that would give you a 4-day-a-week schedule. And since there's only 25 rules, you should be done well before your school year is even officially over. I mean, we're already done with grammar, and we school year round with a 5 weeks on, 1 week off schedule, and we're still in like the middle of May and have finished grammar for this school year. So it's a really nice option for if you don't want to spend a ton of time on grammar, but you do need to get some core grammar concepts understood by your students. So thank you for listening and for joining me for this review, and I will talk to you in the next one. Bye-bye.